All right, now let's begin with the big story that's coming out of the United States.
Absolutely, Rohit. U.S. President Joe Biden's administration has decided to temporarily send additional troops to help secure the U.S. Mexico border. Now, authorities, they are preparing for a possible rise in illegal migration when COVID-19 border restrictions lift later this month.
Yes, that's the big story coming out of the United States. The force will be in addition to an ongoing deployment of about 2,500 National Guard troops. But this sending U.S. troops to Mexico border, to the borders, has been controversial. The question that is being asked is whether the United States is militarizing the Mexico frontier. The administration, though, is denying that that's the case. Here's a report.
With experts anticipating a huge surge in migrants this month coming to the U.S., President Joe Biden's administration said Tuesday it will temporarily send 1,500 troops to help secure the U.S. Mexico border. Pentagon spokesman Pat Ryder.
For 90 days, these 1,500 military personnel who will be sourced from the active duty component will fill critical capability gaps, such as ground-based detection and monitoring, data entry, and warehouse support until CPB can address these needs through contracted support. Military personnel will not directly participate in law enforcement activities.
The increase in border resources, adding to the 2,500 National Guard troops already there, comes as Trump-era COVID-19 restrictions, known as Title 42, are set to end on May 11th. The policy had allowed U.S. authorities to rapidly expel non-Mexican migrants to Mexico without the chance to seek asylum. Biden, who is running for re-election, already has grappled with record numbers of migrants caught illegally crossing the border during his tenure and has taken criticism from all sides. Republicans have blasted Biden for rolling back Trump's hardline policies, while Democrats and immigration activists have lashed out over what they see as Biden's toughening approach to border security. U.S. military troops have been used to help secure the border during previous administrations, including under President Bush and Obama. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre on Tuesday went so far as to call such deployments a common practice. But some in the president's own party were not on board. Senator Bob Menendez, a Democrat and chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, said Biden's decision to send troops to the border was unacceptable and accused the president of trying to score political points.
So what's happening at the U.S. Mexico border, and what is the administration expecting what will happen going forward, which is why these troops are being sent to the U.S. Mexico border? Let's go across to Haim, joining us for more on this. Haim?
Thank you so much, Rohit. I will take over from here. Ahead of an expected surge of migrants, the United States will deploy 1,500 additional troops to the Mexico border. The deployment, it will add 2,500 troops already assisting the U.S. Border Patrol and other agencies poised for the long forecast jump in border crossers. Let's just take a look at the Biden administration's immigration policies and what the troop deployment implies here. Let's just take a look at that. U.S. border curbs, they are ending next week on the 11th of May, introduced under Donald Trump. The Title 42 program used pandemic measures to expel people crossing without migration documents. With the easing of curbs, including decision to lift vaccination requirements for inward travelers, Biden's administration, it can no longer apply Title 42 for border controls. Of Homeland Security stressed that the military personnel will not be involved in law enforcement. They will help in backup activities like border monitoring, IT services and warehouse support. As mentioned earlier, the deployment will add 2,500 troops already assisting U.S. agencies here. Also, in February, the Biden administration announced a new set of restrictions aiming to penalize people who cross into the country illegally. They will have to first go through the process of applying online through a Customs and Border Patrol app as well. Alternatively, people can apply for asylum in one of the countries they pass through to get to the United States border. Last week, the State Department announced plans to set up processing centers for hopeful migrants in other countries, starting with Colombia and Guatemala. Over to you now, Rohit.
All right, Haim, thanks very much for that great explainer. We are also joined by our correspondent Susan Tehrani. In fact, I spoke to her earlier. She sent us this report from New York on why the Biden administration has decided to take this measure. Listen in.
The Department of Homeland Security requested Pentagon assistance in hopes of getting ahead of a possible migrant surge as Title 42 is expected to expire on May 11th. However, these troops are not going to be responsible for enforcement, only for logistical duties. Enforcement will be left on the shoulders of Border Patrol to deal with the tens of thousands of illegal border crossings expected as Title 42 will expire. The Pentagon said, quote unquote, that the military personnel will not directly participate in law enforcement. They will be armed, but they're only permitted to use their weapons for self-defense.
Now, also, Rohit, for better understanding, what is the White House saying? Here, Susan Tehrani is reporting on White House's reaction on the same.
So the White House press secretary on Tuesday tried to downplay this development, saying that troops have been sent to the border, quote unquote, for almost 2 decades. But she failed to mention that usually when troops are sent to the border, they're being drawn from the National Guard's unit. And it's very rare for the Pentagon to send active duty troops to the U.S. border. The Biden administration, nonetheless, is facing criticism from all sides. From the Republicans, first and foremost, they say that the border should be secure, and if not, Title 42 should stay in place. And then the Democrats on the other side are concerned that this move by deploying troops and taking a more serious stance against immigration will ultimately harm their long-term immigration agenda.